Media Bros.
Hello world, I'm Roxy, bringing you another episode of Comic Hot Topic. So this is really more of a discussion about what's going on in the comic world and the cinematic universes of DC and Marvel. Mainly in pertaining to the Logan trailer, which I have done a character review on X23. I want to have a little discussion about Professor Xavier, who is going to appear in the Logan film. My whole issue, I wouldn't say issue, is my question is, how exactly is Professor Xavier in this movie? And when I ask that question, it's pertaining to back in X-Men 3, X-Men Last Stand, in a scene halfway through the film. He is confronting Jean Grey, who is at this point have the Phoenix Force spirit inside of her and is unable to control herself. This eventually leads to her literally obliterating Professor Xavier into, pretty much space dust, space particles. And, throughout the whole movie, they're like, he's dead. They have a memorial. They have the headstone. They're all mourning over the loss. Of course, at the end, this is spoilers. If you haven't seen X-Men 3 by now, I'm sorry, but it's old, so you should have seen it by now. But even Jean Grey dies because Wolverine has to, officially stab her to end it in her life for her to stop killing, of course. But I mainly wanted to have a discussion about how is Professor Xavier alive in the Logan movie and also in Days of Future Past. Now, backtracking, I do remember watching I believe it's The Wolverine, like the third Wolverine movie where, he goes to Japan and he's having trouble with his healing ability or whatever. It was not my favorite Wolverine movie, but I remember at the end of the movie, I think it was post-credit scene, Wolverine is entering the airport. He's going through the security check and stuff, and everyone freezes pretty much. And then you see Professor Xavier and Eric, aka Magneto, approach Logan, pretty much telling them there's some bad things going on and that they need their help, that they need his help. And I remember there was a part where Logan asked Professor Xavier, like, well, how are you here? How are you alive? And Professor Xavier responds, you're not the only one with gifts. And that's how pretty much they leave it. Then we go into Days of Future Past, where now we're not sure where in the timeline we're nowhere in the future, but Sentinels is a thing, and they have to go back in the past to stop the Sentinels, to stop all this from happening. But Professor Xavier is alive and well. So what I want to kind of talk about is how, kind of like fill the gap here as to how is Professor Xavier in this timeline per se. Now, there's many different theories that I have for this. There's many theories out there on the internet, but these are my theories. There is a set of abilities that Professor Xavier have that is not known to the masses. And this is my first theory, which I think is kind of a stretch. But this is also another theory that's out there on the internet that kind of explain how possibly that Professor Xavier can still be alive. This first theory is that Professor Xavier he is a very, very powerful telepath. If you're not familiar with Professor Xavier's powers, he's a telepath who is able to read minds. He can alter our reality, so to speak, alter what we kind of see, what we perceive with our minds. And also he can do astral projection, and kind of bend the will of other minds as well. There's also this other ability where he can kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? He can kind of send his conscious, if lack of better terms, to kind of, his conscious can leave his own body, if that makes sense. So my first theory is that possibly there's some kind of way that he manifests himself in another body, of sending his conscious to another body when Jean Grey, aka Phoenix, Dark Phoenix, was disintegrating him. And this is pretty much how magnificent Professor Xavier is, because during this, he always have a plan. Professor Xavier is one of the smartest Marvel characters that's in the universe. I mean, he's not the top, but he's definitely up there. Projecting his conscious outside of his body as he's being disintegrated. And you kind of, I remember, and if I'm wrong about this, you guys can comment and tell me wrong. If I'm not mistaken, I do remember he had a small smirk as he was being obliterated. And I think that's, Professor Xavier's kind of showing that he knows what he's doing. He has a plan, guys, don't worry. So that could be one thing, that he sent it to a different body. Now, there's some things that I've been reading out there on the internet, and the only thing I can kind of come up with for him to look the same is that people are saying that there's some kind of twin that he had out there that he could send his conscious to, and he takes over that body, and he's pretty much still Professor X, looks the same, has the same thoughts, memories, but just a different body. That's my first theory. That possibly could be one of the things that I doubt we will learn in the Logan movie, but it'll be nice to get a little closure on that. Second is that simply this is a different timeline. The X-Men movies, for people who do not really follow it heavy, can be very confusing. We have constantly gone to the future, to the past, present, and everything in between. And you're kind of, if you haven't been following very carefully and closely, you kind of get lost in where we are on the timeline. But with this being, how this is how kind of like Fox kind of have been pushing the movies forward, is that these timelines are getting a little skewed. So this could just be another altered timeline that has nothing to do with all the previous X-Men movies. Now, this particular movie, how it opens up, it gives me the feel that if people are not familiar with the Old Man Logan Run, Old Man Logan is a comic book series that features Logan, who no longer carries the Wolverine mantra or title. In the Old Man Logan storyline, there was a situation where that Old Man Logan was actually a plot that was set 50 years in the future, where there was a situation where the mansion was attacked by Mysterio, and Mysterio put an illusion inside Logan's head showing all the X-Men roster as X-Men villains, and Logan pretty much slaughters all of them. He just destroys them and guts them down. After the illusion was over, he realized that he killed everyone on the X-Men roster, which kind of sends him in this hiatus where he vows to never pop his claws again. Now, there's more to the actual story, which kind of creates interesting, where villains kind of rule over this like Western style kind of land. There's even a group of monsters that they call the Hawk Gang that has like the Hawk like characteristics and features, who are just downright dirty and ungrateful monsters, man. With that being said, you know, having that feel of the Old Man Logan Run, it feels like that maybe they still taking piece of that, because it still feels like kind of like a beat down Western, as maybe the X-Men and all the other, well, I wouldn't say all the mutants, but all the X-Men in this movie are dead. So with this being maybe an altered timeline, this can be something that can happen that really didn't take effect with all the other movies, where they can have different characters and different different storylines that happened in the past that doesn't really have the events of Days Future Past or before in the actual story elements, which I think would be okay and cool. It'll give us opportunities if they give us any type of flashbacks to see characters we never seen before, and like some actual interesting elements that we've never seen before. My third and final theory is just maybe he never died at all. When going back to him being disintegrated, something that I read online I thought was very interesting. However, it's a stretch. It made me actually really question it. It was like, wow, this is actually pretty interesting. There's a theory out there that says that Professor X actually died, but this is actually Mystique as Professor X. It's a stretch, but I read this theory in the route, and it made some key points that make sense. And the theory is this: as you know, in the movie they had this cure that was able to cure mutants. Those who received this cure lost their abilities and went back to being what they deemed normal and no longer having the mutant abilities. However, with evidence that support that this cure was not long lasting, if you remember at the end of X-Men 3, the last scene you see Magneto slowly, like not slowly, but barely moving the chess piece, indicating that his powers were returning after he took the cure. With that being said, if Magneto's powers is returning to him, why not other mutant powers be able to return to him as well? Which this brings us to Mystique, who in the movie accidentally received the cure in defending Eric from a security guard or a police officer or whatever who had the cure loaded in the Carter's gun, and she became human. But if Eric's ability was able to return, so should Mystique's, right? So what was interesting about this is that after Professor X's death, Mystique at the end of the movie could have been taken on as the mantra of Professor X. And many will say, well, why would she do this? If you remember, I believe, so many titles I gotta remember, X-Men First Class, that Professor X and, well, Charles Xavier and Mystique were actually very, very close best friends. So after his apparent death, Mystique could have, felt sorry that she lost her longtime childhood friend. And with Professor X able to, project his conscious, she can act as Professor X's body, even though she's Professor X's body. His conscious can still go in her body, and he can still control his body. It sounds complicated, but if you think about it, Professor X is someone who can coexist with someone else and live in the same space. And it sounds weird, but this is something I've read that. Okay. But Professor Xavier can coexist with two people in one mind. So it's crazy to think about it, but it's definitely something that he's done before. it would kind of make sense for that situation, which would be a crazy stretch, but it would be interesting too. The question is, how long would they stay that way? If this is the true statement or true theory, and let's say that Professor Xavier has been in the body of Mystique since Days Future Past, and this is a 50-year gap from that event till this time where Logan runs into X-23 and is still Mystique. That would be crazy. I mean, it's definitely an interesting theory to think about. And you know what? It would kind of be, it could be one of two ways. It would be nice if they can tell us what happened, but at the same time, I think coming up with these cool theories, if they don't ever tell us, we can just keep going guessing, and I think it would be nice that way as well. But yeah, that's all I really have that can kind of explain how Professor Xavier is still around and still alive. I think the third theory is probably one of the most interesting way to do and way to go, and I think that would be just like mind-blowing if that was the case. But what do you guys think? Why don't you let me know in the comments below. Comment if you think I left anything out or should have put in. Comment if you completely disagree with me. I mean, this is just a discussion. This is no right or wrong scenario, because they never really gave us the reason of how he is still alive. Please definitely comment and let me know what you think. However, I feel Logan's going to be a very good movie. I'm excited to see it. X-23 is going to be awesome, and just to see what Professor Xavier offered to this movie is going to be interesting as well. However, I'm Roxy from Media Bros. Thank you all for watching. Please leave posts, comments, subscribe, definitely subscribe, and also share this video. If you have theories, drop them in the comments, let me know. Like I said, everything's interesting about this. You all take it easy out there. See ya.